Coming up in our centerpiece, concussions, the unique and dangerous vulnerability for teenagers playing sports.
And I went down to the trainer's table, and he was lying there, and he was drifting in and out of consciousness. We called the paramedics, and they came. They rushed him right into the trauma room, and it was within probably half an hour the doctors came out and said there's nothing we can do.
The phenomenon, second impact syndrome, and young athletes need to know about it. Our centerpiece will tell you about the danger next. Ben Roethlisberger has been put out of a game this year with a concussion, and the Chiefs' Trent Green only now is back in uniform after 2 months. Concussions are a critical football issue. Now, if you're a young athlete or the parent of one, this next number might startle you. According to the American College of Sports Medicine, of the 2 million sports concussions each year in the U.S., 85% are never even diagnosed. Another researcher estimates that nearly half of all high school football players suffer a concussion each season. And as David Amber shows us, young athletes are uniquely and dangerously vulnerable to the hits to the head so common in this game.
Friday night, the stands are full and the energy is palpable. The town is Plymouth, Pennsylvania. The school, Wyoming Valley West High. The coach, George Curry. In his 40 years on the sidelines, he's compiled more wins than any coach in state history.
Good job. Good job. Football is a violent game. Know what you're getting into. It's not a contact sport. Dancing's a contact sport. Football is a collision sport.
For Curry and other coaches like him, football is also a test of character.
You're going to get knocked down. You may get injured. You're going to get injured. That's the nature of that sport. When that happens to you, you'll see kids respond. I mean, they can't wait to rehab it. They're going to do whatever it takes. They can't wait to get back on that field of competition.
3,000 miles away in Costa Mesa, California, Kelly Colby was concerned when her son Matt took to the game at an early age.
I really didn't want him to play football, you know. I thought that it was too dangerous, and but my father always saw him as a football player, and so encouraged him.
We used to go out in the backyard. This was when he was like about 8 or 9 years old, and I'd throw him footballs and stuff, and he'd make these diving catches, and I'd say, Matthew, I think football is your game.
Matt Colby played Pop Warner for 5 seasons. By the time he reached high school, he was a big kid with big dreams. But his senior season, everything changed.
After the 3rd game of the year, some of the students told us that he was laying on the floor on the bus, complaining of a severe headache.
He was invincible like all 17-year-olds, and he had to finish that season. So to hear, you know, you can't play if you have a headache, what is a 17-year-old boy going to say in a situation like that? He's going to say, I don't have a headache.
A few days later, Matt was cleared to play by a personal physician, but was specifically told no head hitting. Darren Colby says the doctor, who was not American, misunderstood Matt's sport.
The physician that examined him actually thought that when he said he played football, that he was saying he played soccer. And that's, I think, what she meant by no head hitting, no hitting the ball with your head.
The following game, Matt's grandfather noticed something out of the ordinary after what seemed like an ordinary play.
Partway through the first quarter, he trotted off the field, and I went down to the trainer's table, and he was lying there, and he was drifting in and out of consciousness. We called the paramedics, and they came. They rushed him right into the trauma room, and it was within probably half an hour the doctors came out and said there's nothing we can do.
A part of you is just lost. In that moment, everything changes. And you're helpless, and you don't have, you go, I went really into denial.
The Orange County Coroner's Office found that Matt Colby died of repeated blunt force trauma to his head. But how a seemingly routine hit turned fatal remained a mystery until Matt's uncle spoke with a hospital intern.
She said, you know, it sounds like something called second impact syndrome.
Second impact syndrome is a catastrophic injury to the head that results in typically in younger athletes under the age of 18.
Dr. Kevin Guskowitz was an athletic trainer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He says that second impact syndrome, or SIS, affects only teens because their brains are still maturing. Though the phenomenon is rare, with 100 documented cases in 25 years, he speculates that 4 or 5 times that many have gone undetected.
In all the documented cases, there was an initial injury, typically about 7 to 10 days prior to a second impact to the head. In 50% of these cases, this injury results in a fatality. The other 50%, there's some degree of permanent brain damage.
That's what happened to Brandon Schultz, now 29. 13 years ago, before suffering second impact syndrome, Brandon was a high school honors student, an aspiring architect, and a star on the football field. What do you remember most about playing football?
I loved everything about it. I mean, you know, from being in the locker room, you know, even in practices, you know, when I'd go into the locker room, you know, and be thrown on my pads and whatnot. I mean, as I was putting on the pads, I could already feel, you know, my adrenaline just pumping up, and God, I loved it.
Brandon's experience was similar to Matt Colby's. After a game, he started suffering headaches. A week later, he decided to play again without consulting a doctor. His mother, Lane Phelan, was in the stands that night.
I remember looking at him, and he was standing there. He had his hand on his head as if it was hurting. He was just in on a tackle and was shook up quite a bit. He'd had his bell rung the week before. The next time I turned around and looked, he had collapsed on the field, and he was just flat on the ground.
It's a miracle that I'm standing here talking to you right now.
Brandon was in a coma for 6 days, in the hospital for more than a month, and underwent 4 brain operations.
I had watched this young man in a month's time go from 185 pounds to about 145 pounds. He was pretty thin and pretty pale. But, you know, it was the first time we'd seen a smile on Brandon's face when he saw his little brother, and I just so can remember that.
Oh, not even!
Brandon is now able to enjoy hobbies like bowling, but still requires assistance in most aspects of his daily life. His short-term memory is impaired, he has partial loss of vision, and he walks with a brace because his brain cannot send the proper signals to his leg.
It's certainly very sad to see a young man with that much promise go through this. It's a great place to
Dr.
go.
Mark Lovell, a concussion specialist at the University of Pittsburgh, uses Brandon's case to help warn other kids at his clinic.
Did anybody tell you were knocked out after this happened?
His medical team sees 50 to 70 high school football players a week, teenagers like this one, who suffered a concussion just days earlier.
Then we went into tackling drills, and I don't remember anything after getting in line.
There's some controversy regarding whether you actually need a second hit to cause that brain swelling that we see. However, in my opinion, we do see this more frequently after an initial injury. What we're going to do this afternoon is have you take the test again.
Dr. Lovell uses a computer brain exam he helped develop called Impact, which measures memory and brain speed and could help prevent SIS. The test, currently used by the NFL, the NHL, and Major League Baseball, can also be found in 900 high schools across the country.
What costs are involved in having your impact tests?
It's hundreds of dollars per, per an entire high school. So the cost is really minimal. It's the cost of several football helmets.
How serious do you think the problem of concussions are in high school football?
I think it's always going to be there, that threat of a head injury, because of the sport we play. The head injury is part of that game, and you're always worried about it. You don't want to lose a good kid because of that. Any youngster that gets a head injury would make it a serious concern.
What do you think kids out there, high school football players across the country, could learn from what happened to you?
I think that they could learn to take every headache seriously. I know that I told people that my headaches were gone before they were gone because I wanted to play.
you always think, you know, you never want to outlive your children, but you never ever think that you're going to outlive your grandkids. And I don't want to ever see anybody go through this again.
David Amber reporting. Now, experts say the most effective tool for high schools is the use of certified athletic trainers, but less than half of U.S. high schools have them. Matt Colby's high school now has one, but 13 years after Brandon Schultz's injury, his former high school does not have access to a certified trainer. We're standing by for NFL Live. Train Company going to